I'm Felina Jean, and this is Black Broads Abroad. I'm an international woman of leisure who said peace out to the United States in 2011, and I have not looked back, except at this ass, honey. Since then, I've lived on 4 continents with travel to over 40 countries. Along my journey, I've come to know some very compelling Black women from all over the world who also said fuck you to their comfort zones. I created this podcast to inspire Black women in the diaspora to take risks and live their very best lives.
Go! Don't touch me! Will you please cover your mouth? If you got to sneeze, get back! I don't want to be attacked, so let go! When that suspicious call, do not touch me! Do not touch me!
I just wanted to start the show out with some levity because there is high-level fuck shit going on in the world right now. So it's been a hell of a week for everybody. New York, my home state of California, New Jersey, Illinois, and I believe Connecticut are just completely shut down. Kagame, who was the president of Rwanda, for the win again, he's been leading African nations with taking progressive steps, like it's been over a month now, just to protect the East African country. Nigeria, it seems, is being generally apathetic about this whole pandemic, and quite honestly, there's no surprise there. But they're still allowing people to travel in and out of the country, like no bans, no mandates on social gatherings, or any provisions have seemed to have been made. It's pathetic, really. Anyway, here in South Africa, where I am, the president, Ramaphosa, he revoked American visas last weekend, European visas, Iranian visas, South Korean visas, and I think Chinese visas too. So the countries that were the most impacted. And so obviously that impacts your girl. Shit got real in the field. Like, my visa literally expired on the 20th. Which was like a few days after he made his announcement about like the visas being revoked. Initially, I was like, you know what? Well, fuck it. Psalm 16 and 18 says, I shall not be moved. And I'm just going to roll with that. But like, my whole life is in South Africa right now. I'm a landlord. I have investments in this country. And it's no easy feat obtaining a residency permit. But be that as it may, I won't be going anywhere, period. But thank God for husbands. Ladies, if you don't have a gay husband, get you one. My husband called me on Monday morning, the day before my visa expired. It was about 7 a.m. and he had already taken the liberty to fill out an expedited visa request for me with the Department of Home Affairs. He made me a same day appointment, and he wrote me out like a honey-do list of everything I needed to bring and copies I needed to make. And I trekked on down to the Department of Home Affairs with my latex gloves and my mask. Inshallah, it all works out. In other news, my husband also told me that the Jehovah's Witnesses in Cape Town are still prophesying in these supposed to be quarantine streets. And he also said that the recession is driving down prices for hoes and that everybody is gay for pay right now, child. Oh my goodness. Speaking of sex, New York City issued like a manifesto of sorts of how we should be comporting ourselves with regards to sex during this pandemic. They kept it like all the way real, a whole buck. Some of the key bullet points were COVID has in fact been found in the fecal matter of the infected. So, you know, for those of you that's into other shit and that's into anal and such, beware of that. Okay. It can also be spread through mucus and saliva. In other words, you, my dear, you are your safest partner. Wash your hands and masturbate. The next safest partner is someone that you live with. You should avoid close contact and sex with anyone who lives outside of your household. The report also urged if you are a sex worker or you meet your sex partners online, no judgment, consider taking a break from in person dates. Kissing can easily transmit the disease. Rimming, which I didn't even know was a thing. If you don't have a faint heart, Google what that is. Anyway, I sent this PDF report to my friend who I like recently kind of started casually dating. And I guess, this dude he's been watching me for about 6 months and he sees that I don't really be fucking with people like that, generally speaking. I'm, solo dolo. But I think this nigga read me. He gonna say after I send him the report, with your level of isolation, even before the corona, I could imagine you have suspended sexual activity. You know what? That's a whole read. A precise one, no less, but it was definitely a read. But you know what? I don't be fucking around, period. And I definitely don't be fucking around in Africa or Atlanta, honey. I'm A-okay with being a spinster in these streets if that means protecting my health at all costs. Okay? So that was my week. I've been stocked up on provisions for a month. So if you stay ready, you don't got to get ready. Anyway, enough of my rant. Stick around for this week's interview with Cha MacCoy, who is a 3-time expat from Harlem world. Cha is a former civil engineer who left her job as a scientist to become a sommelier. And she's now living in Portugal, monetizing her wine and gastronomy business. So stick around for that. But first,
let me tell y'all motherfuckers what happened last week.
this Andrew Gillum news just keeps getting suckier and suckier by the minute. And, I've vacillated about whether I should even report this because he is an HBCU brother, but it's already all over the news. But this nigga just got completely caught out here slipping, and surely he was set up. It was straight out of the Marion Barry playbook of bitch set me up, except this time it was cracker set me up. And they switched out the strawberry that was in the motel room with Marion Barry. They just switched it out for a gay white male escort. Anyway, there is like quite a disturbing picture that is floating around of Andrew basically in fetal position, passed out, bucket naked, as Bernie Mac would say, clearly under the influence of a controlled substance. And you can see the devil's feet in the picture that set him up. Man, I have so many questions. Where are the non-disclosure agreements? Where are your trusted handlers? And how in the hell did you put your guard down for a cracker? Oh my God. After I asked myself all of these kind of initial questions, I really feel a great deal of compassion for him because we live in a society where he clearly doesn't feel free to be his full homosexual self to the extent that he has to go to these lengths to express his sexuality. But then I was talking to my dad, a 65-year-old black man, and he was he's super old school. He was far less empathetic and was he put a gay white male cracker over his black wife and his black children. Yeah, and that's just that on that. I think my daddy dropped the mic. But I was also talking to Gay Hubby, and, we're both of the opinion that this is kind of relatable content for a particular generation. And I think he'll bounce back. I think it's a forgivable faux pas for millennials. And anyway, he's in rehab right now, another page out of the playbook. But I hope he's doing well, all things considered. And I'm just really praying for his wife and his children. In other news, you know all the fuck shit goes on in the state of Florida. Well, in a city council meeting, Omari Hardy, who is a Lake Worth, Florida commissioner, gave the city's mayor the absolute business. He lit her ass up. Like to hear it? Here it goes.
We could have banned large gatherings. We could have closed the beach. We could have put a moratorium on utility shutoffs.
I recessed.
Also not within your power, and the attorney has held that that's true. You came up with new rules at the beginning of the meeting, and then you didn't even want to follow the rules that you came up with.
And you were on that?
I don't care anything about this. We should have been talking about this last week. We cut off people's utilities this week and made them pay what could have been their last check to us to turn their lights on in a global health pandemic. But you don't care about that, and you didn't want to meet. But every other year, you go around and beg people for their votes.
Can we explain
but you care more about your relationship with that guy than you care about the relationship with the people who don't go to work in this building.
Order! You were done. You were done. You're done. Disrespect.
It's disrespectful is what you've done to the working people in the city.
I didn't do anything.
You failed to act.
I didn't do anything.
When you're a leader, you failed to act. You said you didn't do anything. You failed to act.
Good job, brother. This is gross negligence, and I'm seeing this in a few small states and towns. Like, up until last week, Florida still had people all over the beaches vacationing. They hadn't shut the beaches down. The bars and the clubs were still open in the middle of a fucking global pandemic. Even the West Virginia governor was encouraging state residents to go to Bob Evans to dine. Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, incompetent leadership is certainly being exposed. In some good news, several sectors are ramping up as the corona pandemic creates layoffs. Walmart is actually hiring 150,000 delivery workers, and Amazon is hiring another 100,000. Kroger, Safeway, and Trader Joe's have increased hiring or offered bonuses to employees. The franchise 7-Eleven announced Friday that they would be hiring as many as 20,000 new store employees. Increased demand for respiratory equipment has caused a surge in hiring for manufacturing. New York Governor Cuomo is actually funding businesses and entrepreneurs to make masks and other essential medical items. Any of my listeners that can sew, this may be a good opportunity to get it popping. The governor will fund your business to get the product. So definitely seems like something to look into. And let's just end this news segment on a continual high note. In more good news, China has closed down its last coronavirus hospital because there's not enough new cases to support them. Doctors in India have been successful in treating coronavirus. A combination of drugs have been used, and they are going to suggest some of these same medicines globally. Researchers of the Erasmus Medical Center claim to have found an antibody against coronavirus. A 103-year-old Chinese grandmother has made a full recovery from the COVID virus. Apple has reopened all 42 stores in China. The Cleveland Clinic developed a COVID-19 test that gives results in hours instead of days. In South Korea, the numbers are continually declining. Italy is hit hard, experts say, only because they have the oldest population in Europe. Scientists in Israel are likely to announce the development of a coronavirus vaccine. 3 Maryland coronavirus patients fully recovered and are able to return to everyday life. A network of Canadian scientists are making excellent progress in the research. A San Diego biotech company is developing a COVID-19 vaccine in collaboration with Duke University and National University of Singapore. Tulsa County's first positive COVID-19 case has recovered. This individual has had 2 negative tests, which is the indicator of recovery. All 7 patients who are getting treated for coronavirus hospital in New Delhi have recovered. Plasma from newly recovered patients from COVID-19 can treat others infected by COVID-19. So it's not all bad news, guys. Some progress is being made. Anyway, follow the guidelines of whatever country that you're living in at the moment and stay safe out there. Make sure you have all of your provisions and if you're boosting your immunity. Health is wealth more than ever. And that's it for...
Let me tell y'all motherfuckers what happened last week.
Until next time. Cha MacCoy is the founder of Cha Squared LLC, a consulting company with a focus on tourism, gastronomy, and hospitality experiences, education, and training. In 2012, she achieved her MBA in Italy, an opportunity which led her to drink and eat in close to 20 countries. As an expat, she has fostered wine relations and created experiences in the following wine countries: Italy, Spain, France, the USA, including California and New York, Chile, Argentina, South Africa, Hungary, and now Portugal. Her admiration for wine led her to study as a wine professional, achieving Certified Sommelier Level with the Court of the Master Sommeliers at WSET Level 2 Wine and Spirits Award. McCoy's recent recognition as the top 40 under 40 tastemakers by Wine Enthusiast and Cherry Bombe 100 Ones to Watch is an honor that she takes very seriously for shining light on democratizing the wine industry. She is a public speaker, curator, and host for intimate wine experiences with a stellar track record of supporting and building with small business owners in gastronomy, which ignited her event, The Communion, a pop-up wine tasting and food pairing experience that led the invitation to prepare the wine menu for the Jane Beard's House Thanksgiving dinner of 2017 and named one of New York City's vibiest wine tastings by Grub Street. As a trained engineer with 10 years plus of project manager experience, her goal is to bridge her careers to develop better organizational and business performances within wine tourism, hospitality events, restaurant operations, and winery management. She currently divides her time between Lisbon and New York, creating a connection of best practices between the old and new world of wine for her clients and hospitality community. You originally began your career as a civil engineer. So what caused you to give up the stability of your job to chase your dreams to become a sommelier?
So I guess I would go to correct this a bit, but leaving my job as a civil engineer into the wine industry, and part of that is now me actually working as a sommelier. So right now I feel like it was more or less the idea of chasing the dream. Chasing your passion, it's like that go-to question that people ask all the time. What would you do for free? And somewhere in between me trying to climb up the corporate ladder, get to that next level, and feeling like it's a never-ending ladder. I was like, I don't want to work this hard for this. So I'd rather be in something that I actually love doing. Also something people say often is, enjoy the journey.
Right.
So I realized that the journey of being senior project manager at that time was very much something that I was like, okay, I've done it in different industries for different big companies, small companies. I've tried it all. I'm one of those people. It's not like I woke up one day and was just like, I don't like my job. I'm gonna go become something else. I've done everything. I had a gap in between my career when I went to go do my MBA in Italy and came back to it in a different form, but still doing the same type of work. Mm-hmm. And so one day I was like, okay, I tried it all, underneath this, if you want to say umbrella. Mm-hmm. And maybe I need to think about what is it that I personally like doing, evaluating. I spend more of my time and money traveling and trying to travel again. It's always like, okay, you're on a trip and you think about where am I going next? Even though I'm right now in the middle of, South Africa, I'm already thinking about what's my next country. So I was like, I need to start thinking about that or how to make it like something full time or doing something that's full time like this. So becoming a sommelier was just part of the overall goal of entering the wine industry and building what I'm creating right now, which is I call it my humble hospitality empire, and I'm doing that with wine and with this particular position. I love food equally, and if I had the patience and time to kind of go back to school to learn to be a chef, I would do that. But instead, I'm using wine because it's my way into this world, and my passion for wine I picked up, which may lead to your next question too. When I was living in Italy, and so
that was
while I was
definitely
there,
my next question.
So when I was
So in 2012, you earned your MBA in Italy, and you had the chance, as I mentioned in your bio, to eat and drink across 20 countries. Was this your first entree into being an expat? And how has living in Italy influenced your career as a wine professional?
Yeah, so it was my first stint as an expat. Um, I moved to Italy in 2010 and left in 2012. Um, when I graduated, I didn't stay past my graduation, I should say. In this case, I ended up like being less, I would say, more immersed in the culture than I thought I would be when I first decided to go. But I think it's because Italy is one of those very homogenous places that when you're there, everything's Italian. The Chinese food is Italian. You can't go nowhere. Like every moment is wrapped around where's your favorite pizza place. The people I have friends that were only that had celiac disease, and so I already knew where we can get pizza that was gluten free. We like your whole life is like wrapped around, just doing as Italians do, So it was very interesting because, and I think I compare that even more so now living in Portugal, but the fact that there wine was more part of my life than ever. Like like I was an adult, so it's not, and I'm saying that in a way where at home I could have been drinking more wine, but I wasn't. But it took for me to move to Italy to it was there in the morning. Someone's like, okay, it's 10 a.m., but you can always drink white wine. I'm like, true. It's like a lifestyle choice that you're like, yes, I'm here for this, and then also with the amazing reds, and I just really wanted to feel fluent in the culture as well. And you didn't want to be the one at the table who did not know what to order. I guess it was one of those things where I kind of you're like, okay, more of a way of how do I blend in culturally. I also wanted to know how to order, just like I knew how to order my food. I wanted to know how to order my wine. So, and I mean that in a way where you didn't want to end up with a wine you didn't like, So
Right.
if you know it's going to be wine at every damn thing, everywhere you go, it's more or less like, oh, so let me start breaking down what the hell wine is this? Because I love this one, but I hated the one from yesterday. And what grape was it, or which region it was from, et cetera. And so then you just start remembering that to take that on to your next, I guess, dinner party, or when you're going to go buy wine for the house. And, we have wine in the supermarkets, et cetera. So you knew what to look for. So it all ends up helping you out as well. And so that's how the passion started turning into me teaching myself, but just through in this more social setting way, not to become a career at that time. It was just more just so I could survive at the dinner table with my friends more than
What
anything.
city were you? What city were you living in when you were in Italy?
I lived in Rome.
Oh, you lived in Rome. I love Italy. Milan. I used to do business at the Vicenza military base, but I always stayed in Milan to shop and would take the train to Vicenza. Oh, that's excellent. So you currently, as you mentioned, you reside in Portugal. How long have you been there, and what was the inspiration behind choosing Lisbon as a destination?
So I started traveling here in 2018, still through a connection I guess, I still was coming back and forth to Italy because I already had like a community built around my MBA program and people that I knew there. A lot of them even still, I shouldn't say a lot, a few of them still resided in Rome. And some of them even moved back to Rome over the course of these years. So in this case, I would come back to visit and crash with one of my close friends who was there that I made when I was there. And so um, in 2018, she, after living in Italy for 8 years now straight, she had said, like she's gonna move. I was like, move? Like, you were my anchor to Italy. So she, I was a little upset, but then I heard that she had a great opportunity in Berlin, and there was another city I was excited to visit, and now I knew I was definitely going to visit if she moved. So I wasn't so attached to it anymore. And so I was like, okay. So that same year in 2018, I was in Rome. I don't know. I used to fly in for like, I don't know, 4 days. That's how ridiculous it was, just to like be somewhere else. But less than a week, I was in Rome in January of 2018. And then I was going to come back in the fall, in October, November time. And she ended up moving to Berlin in June or July that summer. So let's just say in January when I was there, this was not even on the radar that she's moving to Berlin. And then all of a sudden, mid-year, she's moved to Berlin full-time. And then now I'm like, well, where the hell I go now? Am I going to Berlin now? Which I did do. But I also was like, well, then now I don't need to go to Italy as much because I was just there in January. And long story short, I said, okay, I might as well check out another country that's on my list to go in Europe if I'm going to still end up in Berlin in that case, I was going for Thanksgiving to be with her. And so I ended up saying, you know what, I'm going to take the leap. I'm going to go to Portugal. I must say I was influenced by McCoy as well.
Oh, love McCoy. Shout out to
Yes.
McCoy, like best chef on the planet.
McCoy was in France doing I would say she was doing like a stage at a harvest for a small producer that we both met at a wine fair in France. And then I said I might as well go to Spain to link up with her. And so we'll have time in Spain together. And then from there, we'll go to Portugal together. And then she went back home, and then I stayed in Portugal for a month. So this was a long journey, I feel like, to get there. But I should definitely put in your mind, or I guess put in people's minds who also are looking. I keep forgetting that this is about people trying to be expats or other expats. This is not just like a food or wine podcast that I'm usually on. But in this case, for people to know that I was doing like major research on Portugal and Lisbon beforehand. And I told McCoy then I was not going to Portugal just to be there for a week. If I go, I'm going to stay for some time. So we spent the first week together in Portugal after Spain, and then she left and went home because she already spent over a month or so in France. And then I kind of like started my journey when she left, and I stayed a month in Portugal. So
that was in 2018.
That was in 2018 because I really wanted to understand the culture. I wanted to see if it's all the things that I kept reading about. As far as Lisbon and Porto, I spent some time in Porto as well. Just because I kept hearing such great news about expats relocating to Portugal from the tech hub that's been developing here.
Oh, really?
I kept reading this everywhere that everybody was moving here. And so I was like, I need to, so it was on my list, but I knew that I didn't want to just come and pop in, because then that means I would need another trip to come to like explore and live in the city and actually feel the vibe. So I said, I'm going to come on my first trip and stay a whole month and pray it go well. And so lo and behold, not only was it well, I remember when I was about to leave and I was in the DMs of somebody else who you should definitely, I don't think you've interviewed yet. She's an expat in Paris. And I was sending her a message and I said, I was like in the airport, like, I
Is this
don't
your
want to go.
cousin?
She
Because I
was
met your
like,
cousin in
you
Paris.
gotta go.
Are you talking about your cousin? I met your cousin Maya in
Actually, I'm
Paris.
not. I'm
Oh,
actually not
okay.
talking about my cousin, but you should also interview
I
my
should.
cousin
Yeah,
in
she's on
Paris.
my list
But
too.
her name is, yeah, Maya.
Okay.
Maya, my cousin. In this case, this one, her name is Tanisha.
Oh, okay. I'll definitely reach out.
This one,
So,
she's a expat as well. Her name is Tanisha, and she's in Paris. Uh-huh. And she's in the wine industry. So this is
oh,
why I was like crying to her specifically at this moment. But we because she was like following me and talking to me via like, like, oh, how's everything going? How's all the wineries going? Because I was obviously, along with my trips, I'm always traveling to winemakers now and things. So it's very intentional. I go to visit wine countries on purpose. So
yeah.
for work and to learn, so that when I come back to the States, I can be able to talk more fluently about the vineyards and about the regions, et cetera, because I'm definitely a more interactive learner.
Hmm.
Like everything, like it's like I can read a book 1,000 times about the wine, and I can taste the wine. But I think when I go to the vineyard, it's almost like they become like cousins of mine, and I can talk about them like if I was raised on the vineyard myself. And so it brings another connection or another spark to my events and when I work with people in the industry too. So needless to say, after so much research, reading articles, I don't know if you've mentioned before in the past or what resources people use before they make the decision, but if they are like me who was like searching to get back abroad,
Hmm.
well, this is my second stint. So in my case, I was researching like where do I really want to go or where would I go? And so Monocle, the magazine, is one of the ones that have like an annual like top city destination for relocating every, I think it's their annual summer one, like July or August edition.
Hmm.
And like Lisbon or Portugal or Porto always would come up like in the top 10, I would say. And don't quote me on if it's been in the top 10 on the last 5 years or 3 years, but it's been coming up quite often. And it continues to be one of the places I still research a lot about new cities and what's growing. Um, and I really do love not just the magazine, but just kind of like how they're going to even like the smaller secondary cities and third tier cities instead of, and because I'm coming from New York City, so I wasn't looking for something that had to be New York equivalent, but something that to me was still some action. I'm still young.
So what
And
has
so then
your, oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry. Yeah. Oh, I was just talking about Lisbon. So yeah, just choosing Lisbon as a destination out of Porto versus Lisbon, just to, I guess, touch on that. I did narrow my search down to like what wine countries I wanted to move to first. So that kind of took away a lot of other cities like London, etc. Um, that I also love, but knew I wanted to be in one that was within a wine country and that I had direct access to winemakers. So my final choice was like Portugal, South Africa, actually, or moving back to Italy. And so without South Africa was too far, and just so my mom could feel easily like getting over to me on her own and me to
Aw.
her quickly. My brother lives in DC, and I think between his drive from DC to New York and my flight from New York to from Lisbon to New York, we end up getting there probably around the same time. uh, uh, so in this case, it was just more about the idea of like, okay, if she's alone, if she wanted to see us or if we wanted to see her, I didn't want her to have to travel so far. And then also the idea of being wine country specifically. And then I love the diversity of Lisbon. If people didn't know already, it's one of, I would say, just being in the city of Lisbon. A lot of times people don't know when you land in the airport, the first thing you'll see is like tons and loads of brown faces everywhere.
Oh,
It's very
wow.
confusing. I think most people were thrown off because they're like, yeah, I mean, I didn't know if I landed in Africa or if I landed in Europe. Very strange when you first come. And I'm saying that as a Black woman, like, hey, yeah, like it could catch you off guard. I mean, this would never happen in Italy, no matter how many um, immigrants are in Italy or France, I feel like you wouldn't feel like as soon as you land, like, why am I feel like I see a sea of African folks everywhere in the airport. And this is all the time there. So it's very interesting to see that. I guess it's welcoming too. And then being a person of color, obviously coming to a country that you wouldn't expect to have so much diversity as soon as you arrive. And then you start learning about the history and the colonies that Portugal still has strong ties to. And that's the difference between,
Absolutely.
I guess, other European countries. And the revolution happened in 1975 here in Portugal. And so therefore that's when the colonies, when they stopped colonization in the other countries that was still active. So that's 1975 is obviously very recent. And so with that being said, there is this kind of longer connection, but that has changed. And not to quote me exactly, but some countries like Angola, more African countries, not Brazil, let's just say this,
Obviously, yeah,
are
Brazil.
they have a citizenship. They can achieve citizenship if they were living here during certain years, and in some cases they didn't. There was like a gap in time where if you were Angolan, if you were born here or not born here, you could not get your citizenship as easily. And then there was a year that, okay, they changed the rules. So then there's times where in one family, like an older brother could not be considered Portuguese, but the younger brother is because the law changed.
Oh, wow.
So it's been very complicated, and I think they're sticking to the current status where you can, where they've made it easier for the colonies to actually be able to come here, study, and do whatever, the person from the colonies can do this and be able to actually assimilate into Portuguese culture as they wish, and stay, versus what may have had a time where that wasn't the case. But yeah, I've been addicted to kind of learning about the different African history and cultures that's here.
Right.
In a way where when I was in Italy, maybe because I was younger, but I just didn't know how to connect with them, et cetera, or them being the Ethiopians who were in the country. And they always seemed very far and distant. Here, I feel like because you can find someone from Mozambique or Sao Tome or somewhere, or they're everywhere, that it ends up being easier for me to kind of make a real genuine connection. Even from my friends who are Portuguese, who like, oh, that's cool, my friend from Angola, Nelson, you should meet him. And then next thing I'm kicking it with all of them, and he's telling me more about his family. So it seemed like even if I am around, if you want to say white Portuguese people, they're one person removed from having obviously a friend who background is in Angola because they either was born in Angola or their parents were. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, now that I lived in Brazil in 2011, so I have a real fascination, like for Portuguese culture and obviously the Afro-Portuguese diaspora. My next visa run, I'm gonna have to go to Mozambique. So
yeah, well, hopefully I can meet you there. I would love to visit.
well, you said, South Africa is wine country. You have a place to stay when you come, girl, whether I'm here or not. So mi casa es su casa. I don't know how to say it in Portuguese, though. So, okay. What has your expat experience been like as a Black woman in a very white space, in a very white male-dominated industry? So, obviously, as having an engineering background, that was a great training ground, right? But how have you been received by the international wine community?
I think you nailed it with this analogy, or I guess the training. Being in engineering already is what you think of as a white male-dominated industry,
right?
And then now being in the wine industry, it's just kind of like when people ask me, I'm like, not so much that I'm not fazed by it. Like, of course I want change, but I personally am probably less affected by it because this is what I am used to and what I have already thrived in for over a decade. The same type of environment. It's not like, ooh, I didn't expect it to look so much like this. No, I'm in a place in the same way again. Actually, I think there's more women in hospitality in different ways. Maybe not all Black women, but a lot more women in this space. So I should say, have way more support as a female in this industry than I did as an engineer. I didn't see too many people like me in any level. So even as a female. So that was that. But have you been received by how, I would say, let's just using Portugal, for example, just being here and coming out and connecting, I always say, when people interview me, that wine is my ultimate connector. And I meant that even not professionally, like when I speak to people in whatever background or whatever race they are, I can always, when they say, I'm from, let's use France. Oh no, I'm from somewhere small, like, Limony, or somewhere else. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm familiar with it. They're like, you are? Or, oh, I'm from the Southwest. You don't really know that area. No one really goes there. I'm like, oh, are you from near Cahors? And they're like, oh, I'm from Cahors. And I'm like, oh yeah. When you're in the wine industry, you end up knowing way more about geography. It's like you have maps planted in your brain. And so therefore, even if that person is not a wine person or a professional or wine lover, I can talk about Chile, from, being there during harvest for 2 months and talk to people who are like, no one knows where I'm from. And then I'm like, yeah, well, try me, because like I end up, and I may be off by like 10 kilometers or something like this from my own trip there, but I am, it ends up being the way I connect people. And it's a way that I have a bridge with people on my end who actually are into wine, and then they're like, oh, great. Like, they want to learn more from me, or that wine they are familiar with because maybe someone in their family made, and they was growing up, so it's been a way for me to connect internationally to people from everywhere, whether it's in the States or in these foreign countries that I visit.
So, that's excellent. So you recently launched the Communion, which is an international pop-up wine tasting and food pairing experience. What is your vision for the Communion and what's up next?
Actually, what started, I don't know when you say recent, but it started in the idea in 2016. And then I did the first one in 2017. And it was so interesting because it was the way that I wanted to just kind of that kind of start somewhere. You'll hear from this recording when you listen to it again. It's like she has all these bumper sticker quotes in my head because I do listen to them. I believe they're self-motivating. They're start somewhere. I'm like, yeah, start anywhere. Just do it, right? And so in this case, the Communion was my response to I love wine. I love dinner parties. I love sharing all of this, my experience from traveling and telling people about the wine and the places I've been over the years now, including Italy, whether it's my travels after living there, et cetera. I continue to go back and visit winemakers. So I was like, oh, this is be an opportunity for me to share with others. I call it the Communion because at first it was no food, and just like communion at church, it was more focused on the wine and any sharing of meats and cheese and bread, etc. So it was more just wine focused because it was more of just the wine tasting. And I did food pairing of different sorts, like I said, bread, cheese, and then food sometimes, etc. It wasn't always just food. And so my vision from 2017 to now has changed, where I've now done them. It started in New York in my apartment with small groups, and then evolved to me doing restaurant takeovers in different cities and in different countries now, 5 countries. And I've always used the Communion as this kind of way or the place that I can express my love for wine and also educate other people about wine. And so it will always be that for me. It's just kind of where I get to do it. instead of having to be in a restaurant at that time. You know, at that I didn't have any of the certifications, even though I've been to several wine countries and had this background of even working in a wine shop, which I didn't mention when I first moved back from Italy to New York. My first job was in a wine shop because I wanted to still have this kind of connection. I was dealing with this reverse culture shock I was learning about at the time. And I was like,
Girl,
oh, I need
girl.
to still be connected to the people who think like me.
That's
And I
a
kept
real
saying, wine
thing.
people think like me.
That's a real thing.
Yes, yes.
Reverse
And so I was
culture.
like,
I
oh, I
have to
want
do
to
an episode on that.
be able to. Yeah, I mean, one time I was like, how do I deal with this? Or what is it? What's going to happen when I move back? And I remember someone posting actually on the tribe about, you know, the first thing to do before you come back from a trip is always good to already have a next trip planned. So then you won't feel like, oh, now I got to stay home and now I'm depressed because I don't know when I'm going to leave again. But this trip was so amazing. But then you like still on a high of knowing that in the next maybe even 6 months, you will be on another journey. So
Yeah.
so it's funny. So I did two things. Before I came back, or moved back from Italy, I not only did I already had a trip planned to visit Turkey with my mom at that time as a graduation present from me, you know, graduating from my MBA program. And then also when I got back, instead of just jumping right back into corporate again, I ended up working at a wine shop. And I didn't think about that before I left. It was kind of like when I arrived and I didn't want to go work in like this rat race world. I wanted to do something that was way more chill than that. And so me working in a wine shop is how I kind of picked up my wine jargon outside of Italian wine. Because obviously when you're in Italy, predominantly 90% of the wine that's going to be in front of you, or probably higher than that, probably like 98% of the wine that's going to be around you is all Italian. And so I had to learn about, if I'm going to be in a wine shop or even be interested in this industry, I need to learn about France. I need to learn about all these other places. So I did this. And so the communion itself, back to the question, it kind of connected me with all of the things that I've been learning now since 2010, from being in Italy all the way to my time in the wine shop and me exploring. It was kind of that key question that you asked in the beginning that I asked myself, which was, what would I do for free kind of thing? And I'm like, I would definitely serve wine, talk to people about wine, and host people in this way. And so then I birthed the communion, and it continues to go on. I do them less because I want to have them funded.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Be
Sponsorships.
able to,
Sponsorships all
you know,
2020.
right. Yeah, my word for 2020 is align and alignment. So I have a big vision for my brand and company for Cha Squared Hospitality. And so the communion has been a great way to outlet some of the things I can do to the world, but it also, I know, is something that I will keep going in different scales. So like I've done it where it's only a group of 10, and I've done it all the way to, like I said, restaurant takeovers to a group of 50. So in this way, I'm exploring, you know, so more events people can look for in the future, and definitely more communions as a pop-up in different cities. And South Africa will be one of them for sure.
Girl, I
Over
would
South
love
Africa.
that. We'll have to collaborate and talk more offline. So,
Yes, please.
so I'm not sure if you're a daddy's girl. I kind of gathered that you were. I am too, because you cite him as the person who exposed you to culture through restaurant experiences with daddy-daughter dates. How did that early exposure inform the trajectory of your career and your passion now?
I would say, I think that I probably didn't think I was one until I started talking, you know, like, you know, until people start asking me more questions about what was my first experience. Cause they're like, okay, well, you grew up in New York City. And I tell them that I didn't grow up like in a wine country as everyone's favorite, you know, connection to farmers or wine country, et cetera. And I'm like, no, I grew up in restaurants. Like I grew up, and I don't talk too much about my brother, but me and my brother is close in age. So it wasn't really daddy-daughter dates. It's me, my brother, and my father, though.
Okay.
But he would take us he was just like, before the term foodie was a thing, he would just take us to whatever restaurant he was geeking out about. He would just be like, okay, let's go. We're going to go eat here today. And you're like, it's Tuesday. Like, it's not like we didn't wait till the weekend. We didn't go to places like TGIF. We were really into those. And there's no shade on that. I know that was the era for things like, when I was growing up at this age, like the early 90s and things like this, that we were, when McDonald's is booming, more McDonald's are opening up. So this is why this is very important. I think people need to understand that context. It's because this is at the prime of when fast food nation was making its like place in the state, in people's households in America. Like people were taking their kids at these ages to places like these fast food chains for quick meals when they had worked many jobs, or they would take their kids to, if they did go out, these chain restaurants that everybody was talking about on weekends or whatever. My father wasn't that kind of person. He was someone who sought after being in more, we lived in the city. He was very much aware of these smaller communities and that had their cultural foods in those diverse neighborhoods. And so we would travel to wherever he had a fixated taste for to have, whether it's Chinese food in Chinatown, where he's over here speaking Mandarin to people in his very bad Mandarin. It's not like he was actually like fluent. He would like overhear people say certain words often. And so therefore he would mimic, like he was mocking some of the guys, but that's a good way to learn a language. But I don't think he was doing it just to make fun. And he became almost like a family member to them. So he just say the same things to them back and forth. And we would order our food a certain way because my father did not eat red meat or pork. Neither did none of us, so we had to change the way the sauce was. So that was very important for him to have like influence. He had enough influence over them to like, hey, I want this, but I want to like this. But he didn't have to explain it. But he knew when he came in, everybody knew this already. These are restaurants he was going to before I was born. So,
wow.
Then we would go to Washington Heights and have food with, Dominican and Caribbean influence. And then we would be in Queens and have food, so these little, I was exposed to the world, I say, through New York City's food culture because of my dad. And because he wasn't taking us to these type of other restaurants that was kind of more popular that my friends would go to and my classmates go to. I remember coming like, when you, let's say when you're young, like, oh, what did you do this weekend? What was your favorite meal? Or these type of questions. I would be the one saying all the strange things, and kids would be like, ew. Oh, what'd you have for dinner? Snails. Snails. Ew. It's so crazy because those were the things that, even the kids in not my neighborhood, that's where my father, he'd be like, oh, okay, tell your friend to come with us. And then I'm like, oh, by the way, we're going to have snails for dinner. Like, let's just say, for example. And they're like, snails, and they're like, I'm like, don't worry, you'll love it. And then they'll come, but their parents weren't doing those things. So they would love just to come to do something different. Like with my father, food was the adventure, In my mind, I think even then, I probably thought he had a passport and traveled to all these countries. The way he felt so kind of like at ease, no matter what background the people were, and no matter what restaurant we was in. And so I never felt myself as being different or feeling like I was a Black girl, Black woman. I think I just kind of realized that my father just, when in hindsight, when I think about this industry and how people treat me now as I eat and travel by myself and without, the guidance of my parents now, it was just interesting to kind of see how he navigated and seemed so worldly just being in New York City. Like, just kind of going into these neighborhoods, making sure we ate at the smaller restaurants that wasn't chained restaurants, supporting them. And just to keep, because we just, like the one in Chinatown just happened to be like now a family staple. But even after 9/11, he was like, we got to go there and eat every week because we got to support them because no one's going down and not because of 9/11. And so these type of things is the way, was kind of programmed in me at a young age, kind of like we are the patrons that go out our way to make sure that they survive. And that's why they always are so more welcoming to us. And it wasn't like a racial thing, or I didn't see myself as being from this community, coming from Harlem, as like these explorers into these strange communities. I really felt like these are places that this is what made up the culture and thread of New York City. So we're all New Yorkers, which is like New York versus everybody at that point. Because in other
especially during that time.
Yeah. But I mean, it's one of those things where you feel like in other cities or other states, maybe people still feel that much segregated. And maybe New York was, but my father had the mindset that food was the way that we always connected to each other. And so and that's how we can connect to different people, was always through food. So, and that's another reason why I speak so fondly about Anthony Bourdain, because as you know, that's his same kind of about people and food and how we all share a table together, and that's what makes us one. And you can learn a lot about people through this. And so that's why I speak so heavily about my dad, is because my mom, who was always working like 3 jobs when I was little, it was kind of like my father was the one who was deemed to make sure, and they were divorced, by the way. He was always the one deemed to come over, make sure we had dinner. And so whether he cooked the meal that he wanted to, for us that day, or if he was taking us to one of his favorite restaurants, this is how we end up getting to learn the cultures of New York.
When you come to South Africa, I want to link you with the owner of Yellville. He was actually featured on Anthony Bourdain. But that would be a really great collaboration. We'll talk offline about it. But there's also a lady in Cape Town. Her name's Yolanda Bugsby, but she works with a group of South African women who created a wine tavern in their townships. That's obviously not a very traditional place to consider as a wine tourist, but their mission is similar to yours in that they are democratizing the wine industry and the hospitality space at the same time. How do you think social engineering through gastronomy and travel can advance the quality of life of disenfranchised communities?
I always think about, I use this phrase mainly because people see me as an engineer, and they do speak heavily about this. And engineering is just using math and science for problem solving. And so the terminology itself is like, how do we use, in this case, if you want to take away, I mean, math and science still can be involved, but in this case, how do we problem solve doing like social interactions, right? So using gastronomy and hospitality and travel, we're allowing people to connect with each other. Right now everyone's very sensitive as Americans about what grounds we cross, and with the presidency and people feeling we're all divided at this time. And so, how do we problem solve with connecting with those people who won't understand us? How do we feel some kind of empathy for others, even if it's not a black and white thing, or us against the Mexicans or whoever, how do we actually find a way to connect? And I always feel like, just like what I just mentioned about food, there is a way to do that openly and being more educated. And I feel like people are now actually digging deeper into that. For example, like Cinco de Mayo, right? A very American, United States American holiday, if you want to say. Mm-hmm. Most people, when they ask this question about what is Cinco de Mayo, most people will just answer like, it's Mexico's Independence Day. It's Mexico, like all these wrong answers. And not realizing that when you're in Mexico on Cinco de Mayo, like, no, nothing's happening. Like, it's very strange. And so this kind of, how you say, misappropriation of cultures as well that we're so easily to do in this case, whether it's with the sombrero and, walking around and just thinking everybody only eat tacos and thinking that their food culture is very minimal. I love Mexico City, by the way. So in this case, the many trips that I've made to Mexico City, friends that I would visit there and stay with, it was a way for me to kind of delve into the culture a little bit more, because I never really liked the Taco Bell kind of
Oh God,
house
girl,
version
no.
of
That is
Mexican culture.
blasphemy. That's blasphemy. I'm from
But
LA.
I'm not talking about the
So
food. I'm
like,
talking about the branding. Like, I'm like, forget the food. In my mind, I'm like, the branding of the Taco Bell Mexico is the mindset of what most people in the States think about when they think about Mexican. And so then therefore there's restaurants that are like playing off of that idea. When you're in Mexico City, no one's walking around in a sombrero unless it's for tourists in a touristy area. Um, and there's more to Mexico than Cancun, for example. So I think that is idea that we need to like, or Baja if you're coming from the West Coast. So I think there's a way for us to be able to be more like, how do we become the ones that's in gastronomy or tourism, and it is hospitality. Like, how do we use this to like make sure that we're not playing into this world of like, oh yeah, this is Mexican themed. We own a restaurant. It's Cinco de Mayo. We have to celebrate it. How do you do it in a way that's more responsible? How do you do it in a way where people can actually genuinely connect with the culture? And I feel like those are things that I plan to do, and I hope that I'm doing with the communion and the people that I plan to collaborate with, et cetera, as a consultant in this industry. Like, I really want people to be able to like respect, the heritage of everyone, not just Black people or African people. I want everybody to feel like they have a place to have a stronger cultural connection, that can be respected. The same way, like a taco from a small taco shop in New York City, you pay like less than $5 for. But then if a white man opens a Mexican restaurant and charge you 20, but why do we hold his taco at a higher value than the lady who is an immigrant here who struggled to probably come and create a life for herself and trying to make these tacos? But even ourselves, even other Mexicans as well, would be like, no, tacos don't cost more than $5. Why is she charging more than that? We even devalue our own culture when it comes to food. So we need to change our mindset that we also can make high quality food, high end food, and value ourselves in this way. And then others will probably pay attention too, meaning others like, I'm not Mexican, so therefore I would value this as a very sophisticated taco because she's telling me all the ingredients. She understands this. This person has been doing it for years. She has a recipe from her grandma, blah, blah, blah. That quality level deserves value. And we're the ones who needs to engineer or change the mindset that just because this place has a Michelin star and they make tacos, we deserve to pay this man $20 for his taco, versus her. And that same thing can be said about African food, all of this. And so I use wine because wine is always looked at as a luxury good, no matter if you pay $10 for it or $100. So that's how the communion actually works too, is because I'm able to help people to show them. I don't know if you've seen that. I've done once previously where I've paired wine around the world with food from Ghana. And I've also done one where I've paired wine from around the world with food from Senegal. And just to give exposure that we're the ones saying that we cannot, because if we're the ones who's actually the patrons or guests of these restaurants, it's up to us as the owners of this establishment to pay as equal attention to our wine list and not shortcut ourselves, just put cheap wine or sweet wine or whatever they think Black people want on a list. We also need to make sure that we have high quality standards of everything, our beverage list to match our food and our prices of our food. So I'm working on the B2B side with them, the owners. And then also when it comes to the patrons, for us to be able to understand that, give them that context. Like, hey, I know you wouldn't normally buy this wine because maybe you don't fully understand it, but I'm here to break this down for you. And then you're going to taste the magic of how it pairs perfectly with this food. And normally this type of wine is not on the menu here because they wouldn't have a $60 bottle of Gigondas, for example, on the list. So how do I help you understand why this pair well? Now, do you have to buy a $60 bottle? No, but some people would, and they just didn't know about this wine and why does it work so magically with table gin. So I'm here to kind of like break down that kind of idea. I'm kind of like reverse engineering what goes together grows together. Like that's the idea we think about it. French wine goes with French food, Italian wine goes with Italian food. But what about all the other places in the world like Mexico, which is now becoming a wine region, but let's just say Mexico, or, other places, Senegal, which, is not known as wine regions. How do we still elevate the food experience? So
I always like to close my interviews with this question because, nothing magical happens in comfort zones ever. What lessons have you learned about stepping outside of yours?
Well, to be specific to relocating, for the sake of the podcast, I would say, I'm in the middle of a transitional learning right now as well, and being here in Portugal, as well as the one from before. And I think that just to take away from Italy, I did understand that I do thrive better when I'm distant, when I'm not surrounded by the noise of whether it's family, whether it's friends that I grew up around, or any of these things, or corporate America. When I stepped outside of that, and that's not why I originally moved to Italy. I just wanted to like have my own little eat, pray, love moment. But when I stepped outside of it, I felt the strength that I knew that I can survive on my own. I felt confident that I can be more creative, and I should say free. Like I felt free to kind of create the life I wanted. And I didn't have to ask anybody for permission, or I didn't look to my friends on like, oh, does this look good together? I just went for it. I was probably wearing the most craziest things just because I just felt free to do it. Like no one here knows me. No one's not judging me. No one's not watching to see if, especially in New York City, you got to show up correct.
Okay.
You can't walk your dog. Like even when I'm walking my dog, it's very much like this is an outfit. Like and to some people, like I'm like, and so but it's more about that's kind of like how we're raised as New Yorkers versus like someone's really watching you. No one's not watching you, just in your head about this. So in my mind, it's kind of like when I stepped outside of it, and even now, I kind of move more confidently that I don't, you care less about other people thoughts, and so then that allowed me to start expressing who I wanted to be freely to the world. And in this case, now that's been more around business. What I want to do. I have all these crazy ideas. Half of them I may execute, half of them I may not. But I feel kind of like I don't feel protected that I have to like, play it safe, kind of thing. I can kind of be this way. So I think stepping outside my comfort zone has led me to like be more adventurous in life. And I don't, originally people would ask about like, oh, how long you plan on living in Portugal? And I don't know if I mentioned this earlier. I think I told you when I first arrived, but I came full time in the end of May. June is when I officially moved here with my dog, which was also an
you brought your dog with you?
Yeah, he's here. And so a lot of this has played into, what I thought when I first came here, which was just, mid last year, was that, oh yeah, I'm going to go. I'm already on track. Like I'm going to get my residency. I've already gave up everything now for the second time as far as my house and all that other stuff. So, okay, I'm good. I can just stay out there. And now I'm at a point where I don't know if this is where I know Portugal is a place I want to set roots and be for long term. But I also realize I'm still young enough that in my 30s, I don't have to be here forever right now. And I think that was something that I started, a cloud that started to develop over me. Like, oh, would you feel like you lost? Because I know the feeling when I came back from Italy. I was like, oh my God, I don't want to be in America. And I just went into this whole like depression mode from coming back and not knowing how to get back out. And so now that I've moved abroad again, now 10 years later almost, right? Well, my ticket originally 2010 when I moved to Italy. So here I am in 2020 living in Portugal.
Wow.
And so in my mind, I never really didn't know where I was going next or how or when it was going to happen. And that used to scare me a lot because I was like, I know I can't stay in America full time like this anymore. Like, you know, it was always when I end up like a thing, you know, hovering over me. And then now that I'm abroad again, I'm like, oh, wow, I actually made it happen. So I feel a little less fearless about, okay, if I move back for business, or if I move to another country for business. I've been teetering with the idea of either going to California or Australia. Now I feel like I have the world literally as my oyster because I've already packed up and moved away from home. So in this case, I don't own that much stuff anymore. I can leave this apartment and go to Australia and do 6 months there. And then go back to America if I wanted to or whatever. But I don't feel so like attached, like I've developed, like, you know, in the last 10 years being at home or less than that, but just, I was so afraid of like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm gonna get back out there again. And so now I'm going through this transition that, okay, if I do go back, it's okay. I know I have I have something connected to. Before when I left, it was just for the pure sake of doing my MBA and knowing I needed a break. Now I needed a break, but I know I have a business to grow. And so now I feel more connected to the business idea and growing that around wine and my brand around wine and what I want to open up, which is, I want to say inns or some type of brick and mortar hospitality, whether it's restaurants and um, boutique hotels. This is all part of like a much larger, like I said, humble empire that I would love to have. And so now I don't feel as kind of crazed about like if I go back, I won't be able to leave again. I just know to own less. That's my learning. Go back, own less so you can like pick up and leave again at any point. So,
That's
I
so
don't know.
true.
A question about advice. I don't know if that's a aspiring expats question as well. Like, oh yeah,
That's
always.
true. The lightest I ever felt is when everything I needed was in 2 suitcases ever in
Yeah, if
life.
I don't have anything to hold on to, then I can live anywhere. And besides my dog, and all I do is find out the rules on how to get him somewhere, then I can just pick up and go anywhere. And New York is always one of those special places in the world to a lot of people. For me, besides being home, I realized the magic of it when I'm always away. I think a lot of people think of that too. Like when I was in Italy, I kept thinking about, wow, when I go back to New York, because I'm going back, like I might as well like take advantage of being in New York. And that's why I started exploring South America way more. And so I made several trips outside of wine countries, you know, spending the time in Chile, spending time in Argentina, but then several trips back and forth to Brazil. And that's because I was just taking advantage of the fact that, well, I live in New York, so I might as well fly to places that's closer than flying in from Italy. You know, took advantage of like being on the stateside. And so I guess that's something to think about too. Take advantage of where you are if you want to kind of explore resources that I had. I was such a fanatic about being an expat again that I would say to continue to kind of read up on the countries that you're considering, or what is it just for the phase in your life? Which, if you asked me this last year, I would have said, no, I'm going to Portugal and staying forever. Don't ask when I'm coming back. Or at least for 5 years to get my citizenship, which is still my goal. But it's more or less like, what's the long-term journey of this? What can you do when you get there? Maybe some people have more remote possibilities so they can survive longer. Me, I don't have at this moment anything that's constant enough remotely for me to like stay here full time like this. So I'll probably go back, and that's why I'm still based between kind of like New York and here at the time, and until business pick up well enough that I can be 100% based here. And I'm saying that in a way where I realized this. I had to come out here, feel it, breathe it, put new breath to this experience, and be able to kind of say, okay, to be honest, it actually is good that I'm not in South Africa, unless there's more jobs for me in South Africa. But here, you know, Portugal is still like, it's still new, you know, it just came from having a dictator, you know, like still, even that's still very present in the way things are, how you say, priced in labor laws and things like this. So you have to understand all of this. There is a revitalization that's happening here. And so they're not going to be a Paris tomorrow or even Berlin. It's going to be very much a growing curve. Even though tourism is now booming here and things like this, you have to kind of make your own way here. You can't rely on Portugal. Because the economy here is still developing, you know, after the crisis and all of this. So for me, I think you should do this kind of contextual research beforehand. And maybe some of it you won't know until you show up and live there, you know. And I don't know if anybody has time to be able to stay longer than 2 weeks, but I attribute my first time visiting that 1 month. They made me feel like, oh yeah, I'm very connected to being here, the culture, the people. Most people speak English here, so that's why I was able to get a job as a sommelier at a restaurant here when my own business started to, because of tourism in the winter months, started to decrease. So in this case, I was able to pick up a job at one of the high-end restaurants here. And so people are like, how are you working with clients or patrons at a restaurant and you don't even speak the language? And I'm like, because most of the people that have the money to spend at this type of restaurant are foreigners. So they don't mind me speaking only English to them because most of them don't speak Portuguese. So in this case, I'm able to find work, you know? And so, you know, in my mind, that's the idea. Is like, I knew that already kind of coming to this country. So those people who go into a country where there's another language you have to learn, oh my God, it's like impossible. Like, I would love to learn Portuguese by tomorrow. I put a lot of pressure on myself, but that's because I put the pressure on myself to be consistent, find ways to make it fun, easy, so I can be more consistent. I realize once you crack that code for yourself individually, you'll do whatever it takes, whether people say, listen to, use the apps, listen to music, watch TV shows, whatever it may be, whatever is your thing. Everybody has their own personal thing. I would definitely say that's one of the main thing I would tell Black women, any person that's trying to be an expat. If you can do anything in advance, be as consistent as possible so that you can have that kind of heads up. Now I'm addicted to watching polyglots on YouTube, learning different languages. But I think that's kind of it. I mean, Black women specifically, just, you know, I think we have to feel it out for ourselves. You never know how people are going to accept you, whether people, you in these countries and people fetish over you. If you were in Italy, I'm like, okay, give me a break.
That's a whole other, podcast. Girl.
I'm just saying Italian men, yeah, of course. Oh, yeah, of course I got nice attention and all this other stuff. Some wanted, some unwanted.
So where can people keep up with you on social media to continue to follow your journey?
At Cha, CHA _ squared, SQUARED on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. So it's called Cha Squared Project. And I'm sure that may change soon, but it's there, or Cha Squared LLC.
I'll add it in the link to the bio and everything too. So
perfect. And then my website always, it's just kind of, if people wanted to know more about me or see what I'm doing, I'm hosting a trip to south of Portugal, because I feel like when people come, they kind of explore Lisbon because that's where flights fly into, and then they go straight to Porto, and then they go, oh my God, I love Portugal. And I'm like, I want to take people to the countryside and do all the things that I love. So with folks, because they're always talking about, oh my gosh, this looks phenomenal. And I'm like, yeah, I know, you got to come to the country though for this, you know? So I'm taking people to the south of Portugal to do a harvest trip in September. And so I already got people knocking on my DMs like, hey girl, when you gonna release these details? Because they're gonna sell out and I don't want to miss it. So that's soon to come, all of the details, but the trip dates is from September 4th to September 13th. So look forward to pricing and all that other stuff coming out soon. And hopefully there's a communion near you, whatever city you're in the world. So, and if you already connected to a restaurant or own a restaurant and want me to come host a communion there, let me know. I'm always looking for collaborations. So my website is my name, chamaccoy.com.
Thank you so much, Cha.
Y'all, I done had to come in this motherfucking car to get away from these motherfucking kids. Listen here, trunk. I don't know what the fuck going on, but whatever the fuck y'all put in this air, y'all need to motherfucking contain this shit. Because these motherfuckers need to go back to school. See, I ain't got enough money to be calling the motherfucking weed man. And the dispensaries ain't giving no goddamn discounts for this shit. So trunk, you need to contain this shit, or tell the motherfuckers over there in China that they need to contain this shit. Because I ain't got enough motherfucking weed. Now y'all can come and take me to jail all you motherfucking wanna, cause I got a motherfucking card. And bitch, and the way my brain's set up right now, y'all can motherfucking come get me, because listen.
Anyone else have a word from the Lord, a testimony of God's goodness?
I have a word from the Lord on today. You know, with this coronavirus pandemic, there are going to be millions of people that die. Some estimates are over 75 million at least. However, I think with folk quarantined and chilling all over the world, the birth rate will increase astronomically as well. I just want to encourage the non-booed up among you, especially, to take extra precautions, because this is no time for random hooking up, okay? Also, take heed to the folks that are out here willy-nilly and ignoring all warnings and science that mandate that we modify our behavior and practice social distancing. I guarantee you, these people possess community pain and pussy, and we want no parts of them, not now or after this pandemic passes. Protect yourselves out here at all costs. If you must have sex, do it with a partner you're quarantined with in the same household, or simply abstain. Masturbate. Use your toys, but wash your hands before you do. And make sure all of your toys are thoroughly sanitized. And remember, all sickness ain't unto death. This too shall pass. Have a blessed quarantine week ahead. Shout out to our Patreon members. Thank you so much for your support. If you too are interested in supporting the Black Broads Abroad movement, keep up with us on social media, and that's at Black Broads Abroad, BlackBroadsAbroad, and that's on IG and Facebook. And if you're interested in supporting on Patreon, visit www.patreon.com/Black Broads Abroad.